Hello everyone, and welcome back to Research Graduate. Today we will talk about knowing what really is probability sampling. So, without any further delay, let us head straight to the topic. Probability sampling is a way to choose a sample, or a part of the population you want to study, that is chosen at random. It's also called random sampling sometimes. To be considered random, each research unit, person, business, or organization in your population, for example, must have the same chance of being chosen. Most of the time, this is done by a random method, like a drawing. Different kinds of random sampling. There are 4 types of probability sampling designs that are often used: simple sampling at random, stratified sampling, sampling in a planned way, cluster sampling, simple sampling at random. Simple random sampling takes a random sample from the whole population, with each unit having the same chance of being chosen. Most of the time, this is how a random sample is chosen. Use a random number generator to make a list of the units in your research population. Stratified sampling. Stratified sampling takes a random sample from within certain subgroups of the population, or strata. Each subgroup is set apart from the others based on something they all have in common, like gender, race, or religion. This way, you can make sure that your sample population has enough people from each subgroup of a given population. For example, if you want to divide a group of college students into groups based on their majors, engineering, linguistics, and physical education students would be 3 different groups. To divide your population into different subgroups, you must first decide what trait you want to use. Then you can choose your sample from each subgroup. There are 2 ways to do this: by choosing the same amount of units from each subgroup, by picking the same number of units from each subgroup as they have in the whole population. Sampling in a planned way. Systematic sampling takes a random sample from the target population by picking units at regular intervals, starting from a random point. This method works well when there are already records of the people you want to reach, like a list of an agency's clients, a list of college students, or a company's employees. You can use any of these as a sampling frame. To start your systematic sample, you must first divide your sampling frame into a number of segments, called intervals. You figure these out by dividing the size of the population by the size of the sample you want. Then, you use simple random sampling to choose 1 unit from the first interval. The next units are chosen from other intervals based on where the unit chosen from the first interval falls. Let's go back to our example about how the 4,000 people in the town felt about politics. Systematic sampling is another way to choose 100 people to test. To do this, do the following: determine your interval, 4,000/100 equals 40. This means that you have to choose 1 person out of every 40 on the list. You choose 1 resident using a simple random sampling method, like a random number generator. Take the 11th person on the list as an example. In each new interval, you need to choose the 11th person in that interval until you have a sample of 100 people. Cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is the process of dividing the target population into groups, or clusters. Then, your sample is a part of one of these groups that was chosen at random. Cluster sampling is a good way to study large populations that are spread out in different places. It usually involves groups that already exist and are similar in some way, example classes in a school. Cluster sampling comes in 2 forms. When you divide the whole population into groups, this is called single, or one-stage, cluster sampling. Multistage cluster sampling is when the cluster is split into even more clusters to reduce the size of the sample. Cluster sampling is more complicated than multi-stage sampling. In multi-stage sampling, smaller groups are chosen from larger populations one at a time to make the sample population for your study. In stratified sampling, you divide your population into groups, called strata, that all have something in common, and then you take a sample from each group. In cluster sampling, you divide your population into groups, or clusters, based on groups that already exist. Then, you pick clusters at random and include all of the people in them in your sample. Examples of probability sampling methods: you can pick a random sample in a few different ways. Here are just a few. 1. Draw from the fishbowl. 2. A random number generator. 3. The function of random numbers. Fishbowl draw. You are looking into how library and information science students use a popular portable e-reader and how that affects the way people read. You write the names of 25 students on pieces of paper and put them in a jar. Then, without looking, you pick 3 students at random to interview for your research. All of the students have the same chance of being chosen, and personal preferences or anything else can't change that. This method works well when your population is small enough that you can write the names or numbers of each unit on a piece of paper. Random number generator. Let's say you want to find out what people in a certain residential area think about road safety. You write down all of the suburbs and give each one a number. Then, using an online random number generator, you pick 4 numbers that correspond to 4 suburbs and focus on those. This method works best when you already have a list of everyone and can easily give each person a number. Microsoft Excel has a function called rand. If your data are in a spreadsheet, you can also pick a random sample using the rand function in Microsoft Excel. Say you have a list of 4,000 names and need a sample of 300 of them. By typing =rand, and pressing enter, you can have Excel give each name on the list a random number. Make sure there are no empty rows for this to work. Hope you find this video insightful and knowledgeable to help you with sampling for your research. Anytime you feel like you are not able to do the designing on your own, call us right away and we will do that for you. Stay tuned to Research Graduate to get more such videos. Till then, happy research. Also, if you have any of the PhD and master's related service requirements, visit our website www.researchgraduate.com. Check out the description for more contact details.